A country's deepest wounds do not always arrive at the Vatican through emergency declarations. Sometimes they arrive through a formal meeting, a diplomatic statement, and a list of problems that sound technical until the human cost comes into focus. Pope Leo XIV received Peru's president, José María Balcázar Zelada, at the Vatican, and the public language was calm. The conversations were described as cordial. Relations between the Holy See and Peru were described as good. Both sides expressed a desire to strengthen them. But the subjects on the table were not light. Socio-economic pressure, illegal mining, the common good, dialogue, social cohesion, migration, organized crime, the repercussions of conflicts. That is not a routine agenda. That is a portrait of a nation and a region under pressure. Catholic diplomacy matters because the Church sees public crisis first as a human crisis. The real story was not the handshake. Pope Leo XIV's meeting with President José María Balcázar Zelada was not just a photograph inside the Vatican. It was the first layer of a diplomatic exchange that moved from the Pope himself to the machinery of the Holy See's international work. That distinction matters. A papal audience gives the meeting its spiritual and symbolic weight, but the follow-up talks at the Secretariat of State show where the Vatican begins to translate concern into diplomatic language. The President did not only meet Pope Leo, he also sat down with Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, and Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, the Secretary for Relations with States and International Organizations. Those titles can sound distant, but they are important. Cardinal Parolin is one of the central figures in the Holy See's global diplomacy. Archbishop Gallagher is the Vatican official whose work directly involves relations with governments and international organizations. Together, their presence means the conversation was not only about Peru's relationship with the Pope as a religious leader. It was about Peru's relationship with the Holy See as a diplomatic actor in the world. And the Holy See is not a normal state. It has territory, ambassadors, treaties, and formal relations, but its purpose is not military power, economic gain, or regional dominance. Its diplomacy exists because the Catholic Church believes political life has moral consequences. When a government speaks about mining, migration, crime, poverty, or social cohesion, the Church hears more than policy categories. It hears families, workers, communities, borders, fear, exploitation, and the fragile conditions that allow people to live with dignity. That is why this Peru meeting matters beyond protocol. Peru is not only a country with Catholic history. It is part of a region where the Church often stands close to communities affected by poverty, corruption, environmental damage, displacement, and violence. The Vatican's concern is not abstract. It comes from parishes, bishops, religious communities, and ordinary Catholics who see what instability does on the ground. So when the Holy See press office later described the conversations as cordial, that word did not mean the issues were easy. It meant the door was open. It meant both sides were willing to speak inside a relationship that already exists and that both want to strengthen. That is why the words chosen by the Holy See press office mattered. The Holy See press office described the conversations as cordial. And that word matters because Vatican diplomacy often speaks with restraint. A cordial meeting does not mean the problems are small. It means the relationship is strong enough to place difficult matters on the table without breaking the conversation. The first point was satisfaction with the good relations between the Holy See and Peru, along with the desire to strengthen them. That is the diplomatic foundation. Before the statement named the wounds, it named the relationship. In Catholic diplomacy, that order matters because the Church does not want dialogue only after every crisis is solved. It wants dialogue precisely because crises exist. Then the statement turned to matters of common interest. Socio-economic trends came first. That phrase can sound dry, but it points to the pressures that shape ordinary life. Work, poverty, inequality, access to opportunity, and the difference between a society where families can plan a future and one where survival consumes everything. The Church pays attention to those trends because economic life is never only economic. It becomes moral when it touches wages, land, migration, corruption, and the dignity of workers. Then came illegal mining activity. That was one of the most concrete issues named. Illegal mining is not just an environmental problem or a law enforcement problem. It can pull whole communities into exploitation, damage land and water, empower criminal networks, and place the poor in the path of danger while others profit from disorder. When the Vatican places illegal mining beside the common good, it is treating the issue as a wound in the social body, not merely a technical violation. The conversations also addressed the promotion of the common good and dialogue, as well as commitment to social cohesion. Those are classic Catholic social concerns, but they are not vague. The common good means the conditions that allow people and communities to flourish together. Dialogue means more than polite speech. It means a willingness to seek truth with others rather than reduce public life to enemies and factions. Social cohesion means a society can still recognize itself as one people, even when it is divided by class, politics, geography, or pain. That is a hard assignment for any nation. It is especially hard when economic pressure, illegal activity, and mistrust begin feeding each other. A country can have institutions and still lose confidence. It can have growth and still leave communities behind. It can have public language about unity while people on the ground experience fragmentation. Then the conversation widened beyond Peru. Migration does not begin as a statistic. It begins when ordinary people decide that staying has become harder than leaving. That is why the final part of the Vatican statement widened the lens beyond Peru alone. The Holy See said there was also an exchange of views on the regional and international socio-political situation, with particular attention to migration, organized crime, and the repercussions of conflicts. Those three issues belong together because each one can feed the others. Conflict pushes people from their homes. Organized crime grows where institutions are weak. Migration becomes more dangerous when desperate people are forced into the hands of traffickers, smugglers, and corrupt systems. For the Church, this is not only about border policy. It is about the human person caught between fear and necessity. A family crossing a border, a worker trapped in an illegal economy, a village exposed to criminal control, a community divided by poverty or violence. These are not separate stories. They are the same question asked in different places. What happens when public order no longer protects the vulnerable? That is the pressure behind Pope Leo's meeting with President Balcazar Zelada. Good relations between Peru and the Holy See are valuable, but they are not the final goal. The deeper question is whether those relations can help strengthen the conditions that make justice possible. Lawful work, honest institutions, protection for communities, care for creation, dialogue across political divides, and a shared commitment to the common good. None of that is easy. Illegal mining cannot be solved by a Vatican statement. Organized crime does not disappear because diplomats name it. Migration pressures do not end because leaders express concern. And conflicts, whether regional or international, keep sending consequences far beyond the places where they began. Still, the Church keeps entering these conversations because silence would be its own kind of failure. Catholic diplomacy does not replace governments. It does not command police, run economies, or control borders, but it can insist that behind every policy problem stands a human face, and that behind every national crisis stands a moral question. A cordial meeting can still carry a hard warning. Can diplomacy protect people before crisis becomes collapse? If this helped you understand what the Church is actually doing in the world, liking the video helps more people find this kind of Catholic coverage. Subscribe for more Catholic news, Vatican context, and stories from the living history of the Church. And tell me in the comments, what happens to a country when illegal mining, organized crime, and migration pressures are treated only as political problems and not as moral ones. The story continues, and so does the work.